Hey everyone, I'm Leslie and I'm back with Original Book Nerd with all things books. And today we are chatting with Britton Ashley, whose debut novel, Covered in You, is about to have its book anniversary soon. So without further ado, Britton, how are you today?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm excited to talk about your debut, which we're also going to cover the second book in the series at a later date. So
Yeah.
if you love this episode, stay tuned because we have more coming.
Yes, and I'm writing the third one, so there will be so much more to you. I promise you'll get fed.
So, Covered in You was your debut. How was it for you as a writer now being able to say that you are a published author?
It's a lifelong dream, like from my childhood. I didn't know a lot. I didn't know everything about what I wanted, in life, but I did know that I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to tell stories. So it took a little longer than I thought, and I definitely know, like, if I had told 9-year-old me I'd be writing romance novels, she would be very confused. But it's amazing. It's unreal sometimes. Like, I look at my shelf in my home where my books are when people buy them directly from me, and I look at them and see my words are in there. Those are my books. I designed the covers. I'm an author. I forget sometimes, and I get a whole new wave of excitement and joy that it's real. It's my real life.
So, Covered in You is a small town second chance romance, but early reviews came in and it's very much a different style of second chance than we normally get, mainly because the way you did this small town contemporary is you wove a lot of real things and real life hardships into Ivy and Jace's story. Was there an aspect or a topic that you had in their story that just resonated to you as a debut author or an author in general?
I think there were a handful of things. So I wrote this book out of the grief of losing my cousin, which is another topic. Grief is another topic in there. It was kind of my main pillar. And so I grew up in a small town, not in Gunnison specifically, but a small town in Oklahoma before we moved to Colorado. And a lot of times, people do love, and I do too. I love an idyllic small town where everything is sweet and your neighbors are nosy, but they're mostly well meaning. And all those things are great, but they're not the full picture. And so we read for escapism, but for me, it felt really disingenuous to not include some of the realities of things like having a tight knit family where maybe everybody doesn't acknowledge the way somebody might be treating you, or the reality of addiction and how hard it is to face addiction in a small town and in a close knit family. A lot of those things just kind of came out of my experiences and my family, my past, those type of things. They just sort of tumbled in through the story. And then whenever I sat back and read it back again, I was like, I can't really separate this from the love story because they're both, right? As much as we love the idea of, and I was just swept away and all I could think about was him and all that ever influenced my life was him, that's not, you still gotta go to work, you know? Like, there's still like, you're still in town, you still have to deal with your family stuff, and Ivy also has a chronic illness, so that's always going to influence, her every move. And so it just really felt, now there was like, other than grief was kind of the one specific thing that I was like, yeah, no, this is a book about grief. But the other things were like, no, this is just, you got a lot of things going on. There's never just one thing happening, for better or worse.
Better or worse? And that's the perfect way to end that question as I ask you about Abby, who
Yeah.
Abby, and it's we always have that character in small town that just loves to cause, the drama and the anger between the main characters. As a reader, us being angry at whoever this character is. And in this book, at least for me, it was Abby. I don't want to say like what was your reason for making her so awful, but how did you balance her character being so important to kind of give the insight for the reader to see that each of them have a past, some of it closer than others, and it's a small town, so there's nosy neighbors and family members that want to insert their opinion. But Abby also kind of had her own dimensions in this story because of why she was the way she was toward them. So how did you balance that without making it so much that someone would be like, I can't read it because she's just so troublesome?
That is, I will say that is on a good editor, because when my first draft, my editor was like, it's very clear that you hate her and you're gonna have to make her more well-rounded. When I first made her, she really was just this very one-dimensional pain in the butt, spoiled brat, just all these, and she's still all of those things. But I had to kind of sit down after I got that note and say, okay, let's look a little further at her. When I first put her in, she really was just one-dimensional, and I really said, okay, how did she get here? Why is she like this? Let's look at the whole family dynamic. Let's take a step back, look at, because it is a big family, and that's a note that is, there's a lot of characters, and every character is going to get their own novel. And there have been requests to get Abby's story as well. I don't know. I might. We'll see. But it was the note from my editor, and then just taking a step back and really diving into a character's motivation, which was really good practice because this is my first novel, and so finding those depths for those characters, it's not always forthcoming. So I had to really sit there and kind of think about my own experience with my own cousins, my own experience with people like this in the past, and how to look and see where those things came from.
My next question was going to be if we would get Abby's story to really learn why she is the way she is. So now we know it might come, it might not.
It might come.
But I'm sure we'll continue to see her.
Yes, yeah. The conversation about her, because they're intertwined standalones, so obviously each character was impacted by her loss. And so that's kind of, we see some conversation, in the next book, and then in the book I'm writing now. I'm about to touch on the loss of Abby again. I don't want to give too much away, but it's just in a family conversation. You never get together with your family after losing someone and not think about it. There's always the laugh you don't hear. There's always the, oh, I made this dish because it's their favorite. And they were really the only ones who liked it, and I made it out of habit because I always make this for family things. But now that I'm here, I realize, oh, that was their favorite. So you never, when you're in when you lose someone, you never forget that you lost them. So that's, Abby is always going to be a part of the story. We'll just see. And that's what I think, if that might be a great novella or something like that. We'll just have to kind of see how it shakes out. So it was a really long-winded way to answer that question.
Well, we'll go on to a lighter question. So between Ivy and Jace, which character was easier for you to dive into their head, and which one was more difficult, but then gave you the end result where you were just like, I'm glad that you fought me so hard to get this on the page?
Definitely. My first draft, I'll always go back to my first drafts because it was just like, I was just getting everything on the page that I was feeling. But my first draft did not include any of Jace's perspective. It was all from Ivy's POV. And I did a couple rounds of edits without him. And then talking with my editor and my beta reader, who's a close friend, and we were saying, well, it's missing something. And as soon as we started adding Jace's voice, Jace's perspective, Jace's flashback, it felt like it was finally coming, like it finally came together. It was like the story was missing him so much. I mean, I was really, because I also, in my first draft, I planned on making him more of a bad guy. But then I couldn't, whenever I started writing him from his perspective, I could not make that sweet cinnamon roll boy do a bad thing. Like, I don't want to give anything away, but like, he just is so precious to me. And I feel like he really swooped in, and some of the issues with Ivy, because she's the one who gave me a hard time. She's the one who didn't want to like divulge anything about what she was thinking, what she was doing. And then when I added Jace, it softened her up a little bit too. So I really got to credit Jace and his perspective for pulling it all together.
I would be curious to see how you could make him a bad guy too.
And there's no...
Maybe it could have been like, it read as he was a bad guy from her point of view because we don't see what he's thinking.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he's a cinnamon roll.
He is such a cinnamon. The first time I heard that phrase, I was like, oh, that's Jace. And Jason, obviously, he's going to continue popping up in the next few books. And I'm like, he becomes more dear to me as time goes on. And every time I'm like, could you do something ornery or like maybe make a backhanded, statement or something? And that's just not nature. So we have Cam for that. It'll be fine.
So for Ivy, I want to touch on the way you did a chronic illness representation. Was that always going to be part of what you had in her story? And how did you find balancing the difficulties someone that has a chronic illness has to live with and go through on their day-to-day activities and how they get by in life to making her story and her romance pivotal in the sense that she'd never let it define who she was, but she also had to accept that, she may not be able to be doing 100% what someone else can do that maybe doesn't have the setback she would have in her life.
Yeah, so she was always going to have a chronic illness, and Ehlers-Danlos is a nod to some people that I love very dearly, my friends who have Ehlers-Danlos and POTS. And so I really pulled a lot, because I have my own different chronic illnesses, but the thing about those are that the flare-ups are intense. And for my friend especially, she'll go through maybe a year or two where she doesn't have an incident, where everything is fine. And for me, that was really pivotal for Ivy, because being a person with chronic illness and moving out on your own away from your support system can be real. It can be a really big problem if you don't have, if you have a flare up and you don't have people around you who know how to handle that, it can be pretty serious. And so I wanted Ivy to have taken a really big risk when she left Gunnison, and the risk was big on a lot of different scales. Stress is a huge part sometimes of chronic illness flare-ups. If you get too stressed, your body reads that a certain way, and so that also made sense for her coming back to Gunnison, and the stress of all the things that she's dealing with causing these flare-ups, and it kind of being like a 1-2 punch almost of not only am I having to deal with grief, but then my body is fighting me, and these incidents happen. And I think it was really important for me to show a person with chronic illness, they're still living, they're still doing all of the things, and it's not every conversation is led with, well, my chronic illness may keep me from doing this, but I didn't want it necessarily to be like, I'm such a hero for pushing through this chronic illness, but just I have a chronic illness, I am mindful of it, but I am living my life, getting on the bar, dancing with my cousins, and her chronic illness is we still show little bits and pieces of it in the next, couple books, because it'll always be a part of who she is, but it's not the first thing I would use to describe her either. And I think that's on her tenacity. She's not necessarily the most, immediately your favorite, sweet, kind, fun person. She's a little bit more reserved, a little bit held back, but not held back by her chronic illness.
And of course, JC's there to hold her hand through all the rough patches.
Yes, and I loved the idea of, they grew up together, so he was there through all of the confusing stuff before she was diagnosed. He would have been there with her, and he was there with her through hospital visits, and when I was looking for inspiration and kind of plot, because I kind of plot, but things kind of, as I see things, I like to add them. And I saw this video of a teenage boy, and he was laying in this hospital bed, holding this girl who was hooked up to all these different things, because she was having medical issues, but he was just there with her, and I was like, oh my god, that is so Jace. Jace would absolutely show up and read Lord of the Rings to her, or just hold her hand or whatever to make sure she's not alone. And that was a huge part of, I think, showing his soft side and how soft he is with her, even when she is prickly.
And it's kind of a version of opposites attract as well, because, like you said, she's more closed off through what her life has dealt with, her hand of cards. And he's kind of closed off at times, but not with her.
Yeah.
Which I guess is the distinction. He can be, but not with her. Which
is one of my favorite. I love he was never going to be the grumpy, but I do love he's grumpy, but he's off with her. So we get a little bit of that, and the kind of the black cat golden retriever. I love that dynamic with them, because it's also, anyone could be the black cat, anyone could be the golden retriever, but I think we typically think of the grumpy guy being soft for the golden retriever girl. She just so happens to touch his heart and make him be sweet to her. But for them, it's a little more flipped. They both kind of have their moments of shutting down, but she is more soft for him than she is with anybody else.
So I have a little bit of a twist.
Okay.
I have another question about their characters later on.
Yeah.
But right now, I have some about the town that we have this book set in. So Gunnison is a real town in Colorado. Did the town that you placed these stories in have any significance to you as a writer, or as a person in general, I guess I should say?
Yeah. No, I did. So I grew up in Colorado. So I lived in Oklahoma until I was 10. We moved to Colorado, and we lived in Colorado Springs until I was 20, 21-ish. So my most formative years were in the mountains, and we would go, drive through the mountains, drive through the, cities and stuff. But I loved I always loved Gunnison. It's a college town. It's really pretty. It's just freaking gorgeous. And we would go up there when I was like in my college years. I had a friend who went to school there, and we would go up there for, for rodeo stuff and just like to hang out because it was a fun, cool college town. And so I did kind of change some things. Obviously, I'm kind of made it my own, and I haven't been there in a long time. But every time I think of Colorado, I think of Gunnison. That's my first. So every time I sit down to write, it's kind of like getting to visit my favorite little town. And it's just, if you ever get a chance to go, it's gorgeous. It's a long drive, but it's the most beautiful drive. So
everyone is always in everyone's business in a small town. Did you have a secondary character or a side character, a pet, a beloved animal that you added and then you were like, oh my God, this person is just, now they have to have a story. And I say pet because yes, sometimes pets have their own stories in these books.
No, you're right. No. There's a character who is a close friend of Jace, and he is a police officer. He kind of has a little more, I would never write propaganda, I'm not going to lie to you. But there's a little more to him than has shown up on the page so far. And that's Blaine. And I've heard from more than one person that they would love to see him and another character have the happy ending together. And I kind of see that in the cards for him. But they're just, Blaine he's like my pet. He's like my little guy that I'm pulling for him. I want good things for him, and he's just gonna have to prove it. He's gonna have to work for it.
Was there one on her side that you felt just kind of balanced out her?
Yeah, her cousin Betty.
Character story?
Yeah, her cousin Betty, whose story I'm writing right now. I feel like Betty is the one who, because they're really close in age. Abby, Ivy, and Betty were all, I don't know if you've ever had a cousin who was just right your same age, that just like every Christmas, everything you guys are real close together. And Betty was always kind of the odd man out between those, between the three of them. And so when Ivy comes back, and now Abby's gone, it's Ivy and Betty. And Ivy never paid a ton of attention to her, but now she's seeing her. And I just feel like Betty has such a soft side. But I feel like she's a middle child. But I feel like Betty is a mostly soft side. And I feel like that balances Ivy's prickliness. And that Betty is also able to say, I grew up with you. I know your stuff. You can't hide from me. I think Betty really kind of stands there in front of Ivy and says, I see you. You cannot hide from me. I'm not going to let you walk in the shadows. And I love that. I love that about Betty.
Middle child.
Yeah. Yes, it's a very important detail. I have a middle child. I didn't realize how important being a middle child was till I had one. And now, man, that is a very defining place in life.
That's so, the eldest daughter trope right now is so hot.
Gosh, yeah.
In all these books about how different it is being like the oldest sibling in a set of however many. Yeah. And I'm like, we forget though, the middle child has its own trope in the romance world.
Yes, it does.
And Betty was a character that when I was reading, I was like, I'm very curious if we see the side she shows Ivy, and we obviously see it from Ivy's point of view. And I'm like, I'm sure in Betty's mind, it might be the same, but of course we're going to have differences. And I was like, and I bet that role she has in her family is going to come into play a lot.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is coming in a lot in a way I didn't expect in this one, because I'm still working on the first draft, so things are still coming together. But her story takes place mostly on a road trip. I'm about over 2/3, maybe right at 2/3 of the way in. And she has mostly communicated with her family over the phone. And so that has kind of given her kind of her own identity and her own space, with the job that she's chose. But she's, like I said, she's about to go back, and they're about to have the whole family's all together. And she's going to be, when you're always 17 in your hometown, and you're always, you're always kind of who you were to your family, no matter how much you've grown, and then you kind of feel like you need to prove how you've grown. And so that's what I'm walking into with Betty's. It's literally the next chapter that I'm writing, hopefully later today. And it's going to be interesting to see how she handles herself with the growth that she's had, but still being viewed as the middle child, not, not the oldest, not in charge of anything, but still her own person. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for her. I don't know what they're going to do to her.
Well, I'm going to get into some favorite parts of the story that you have, if you have any favorite parts. But my first question is there a chapter or a scene where if you had to convince a reader to pick up this book, you would say this scene is what, epitomizes their whole story?
That's hard. I don't know. I mean, that's a great question that I was not prepared for. I think maybe the scene where they are finally honest with each other. I think that's going to give, I mean, obviously it's going to give a lot of the book away, but when all their cards are on the table and you see them and they're being so raw together, I think that kind of encapsulates oh my gosh, finally we're being honest, and it sucks and it's ugly and it's not pretty, but it's real. I think that probably would be one of the scenes that I would say encapsulates their relationship. Obviously, the scene after the funeral in Daddy's truck being all action, no thoughts. That's probably another one. I think that kind of encapsulates Ivy. She acts and then she thinks about it later, and that's kind of her vibe as a person. So yeah, I think maybe those two. That's a great question.
Well, it's always one of my favorite questions to ask too, because I always think it'll be one answer and then you throw me something and I'm like,
yeah,
well now that makes sense.
Yeah, well, being an author, in my experience, told me obviously we have completely different experiences. I always love hearing from readers of like, what was the thing that sticks with you, and I'm always surprised by what readers say. Sometimes it's things that I completely forgot. My favorite, the trend right now of the song where she goes, "Who's Madeline?" That is how I feel sometimes. The Lily Allen has the song where she's like, "Who's Madeline?" That is how I feel sometimes when readers tell me their favorite scene, and I'm like, cool, I forgot that happened.
Oh, I'm more of a quotes person, so I'm always that one who's like, oh my God, I love this quote, and I'll always get the answer back. That quote's in this book.
Right? Yes. Well, because you do, like, I don't know how to explain it, but I sit down and I write these things, and I've talked to other authors who say this happens to them too. I sit down and I type, and the things just happen, and the things just come out. And I don't necessarily feel like I said it, because this is the character, so it feels like the character has this moment, and so I don't hold on to it as this brilliant or interesting or creative thing I said. So my character said that. That's on them, which might be a type of compartmentalization that I might need therapy for, that I'm not fully realizing myself. But yeah, no, that absolutely, I'll be like, oh wow, that is cool. Who wrote that? Me? Yeah. Very good.
My next one, and I'm going to preface this next question to say that one of my favorite lines in this book was the way you wrote the fight or flight response. And it's the fight isn't any braver than flight, it's just a different response. Because we often want to see, the main characters not choose flight.
Yeah.
But flight is a different type of coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And in this story, it was one that was utilized a lot more than we typically see in a romance. And I was just curious if you had any other favorite quotes or lines from the characters that just spoke when you wrote.
Now that line, I do remember that line, because that was something that was said to me and has been kind of I don't want to say like a mantra of mine, but it's something that is very much, I remind myself of that a lot, because that tends to be my go-to. I think, I'm trying to think of, I spent a lot of time adding Taylor Swift quotes in there to just kind of give it like a fun Easter egg kind of thing. But I think whenever Ivy, she's talking with her cousin, she's talking with Betty, and Betty's like, oh no, I don't, and she's kind of freaking out, and she's like, I didn't think we were going to be here, they were getting ready to go to the funeral, and Ivy says, no one expects the worst day of their life. I think that's another thing that kind of stuck with me, and that I wrote in because it stuck with me. Because sometimes, you're like, I didn't respond to this the way that I wanted to, and I didn't show up for my people the way that I wanted to, and I just reacted and it didn't go well. But like, when it's a bad day, no one expects a bad day, and no one certainly expects the worst day of their life. So I think that's probably another one.
To kind of do at the end. So these are going to be character based ones. So I'm going to ask a question and you're going to say between Ivy and Jace which one you think would do it more.
Okay, I'm ready.
Who do you think would be more likely to cut in line at the coffee shop because they just couldn't wait in the line out the door?
Ivy. Jace would never. I don't know if Ivy would, but between the two of them, I would put it on Ivy.
So, who would be more likely to tell a family member that they were too up close and personal in their business
Jace.
at a family dinner?
Yeah, that would be Jace. He would be so nice about it, but no. Jace would draw that boundary. I think Ivy would be, maybe now, but certainly during the book, it would be Jace.
Between the two of them, who would be more likely to try to regift a Christmas present and then brush it off as, oh no, I knew you always wanted this?
I'm probably Jace. That sounds a lot like him.
Number 4, which one, and I can't remember if this is actually answered in the book, but which one would be more daring in winter sports if they ever went on like a ski or winter trip into the mountains?
I think Ivy, because even just going on that trip would be a gamble for her. But I think that she's the one who would be like, you know what, I'm gonna try to do something a little more difficult, or maybe do something a little more wild, just to see. I think that'd be Ivy.
And my last one, who's more likely to put salt in the cookie batter at the holidays?
I think that's a great question. I think maybe Jace, just because he wouldn't know. Like, it wouldn't be out of malice. It would be out of, I was too busy chatting, I was too busy talking, I was too busy looking at Ivy, and I scooped from the wrong thing.
Your debut. Book 2 is already out, but for the readers who want to continue in this series based in the Rockies and Colorado, what can you tell them to expect in Book 2?
In Book 2, it is a sapphic summer rom-com. So we've got two incredible women who have both been through their own journeys and are both very ambitious and are both bipolar. They're both are on medication and are talking about those experiences and those, well, when they're talking, that's what they're talking about. So you can expect a 1-tent trope. You can expect a little, like, one-sided kind of found family. You can expect a lot of sass, a lot of attitude, a lot of pining, a lot of yearning, and a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of, they go camping in that one, and I always feel like that's a lot of fun, kind of a little Parent Trap moment. Yeah, that's what I would say to look forward to.
Well, I enjoyed talking to you, Britton, about Covered in You and your debut journey. And I'm excited to get you back on to talk about the next book in the Rocky Romance series.
Thank you so much for having me. I had such a good time with you.
Thank you. And for everyone who tuned in, thank you. Like, subscribe, comment. I do always try to get questions answered, and we will have a little teaser of this episode on social media, so that's also an avenue you guys can comment and engage with both me and Britton. And stay tuned for information about the next episode, because Britton is going to be coming back for Casual Sparks, which is the second book in this series. I hope everyone enjoyed, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.